What we will do today is like I will show you one more use case of migration using Workbench, and post that we will see how we can migrate things using SFDX. So let me log into the dev org. So what we are trying to do here is like I am like I have created two trial accounts. So I'm considering one as dev and the other one as QA. So I'm creating some components in dev and I'm trying to move them to QA. So like you too can, what you can do is like you can create two Salesforce developer edition accounts. You can while providing the name usernames for these accounts, what you can do is like you can include dev the word dev in one of the orgs name, and you can include the name QA in the other accounts username. So like what I did is like if you look at the username of QA, so I named my QA org in this fashion. Like if you see like it contains QA in its name, and similarly like I created multiple orgs earlier. So if you look at this particular username, it has UAT in its name. So just to differentiate between the orgs, you can name the username in such a way that you can identify an org looking at the username. So you can create two developer edition accounts, consider one as dev and the other one as QA. So for the like in the initial some 4 to 5 sessions, we will be just we will learn only how we can migrate things from one Salesforce account to another Salesforce account. So you too can create those two accounts, and you too can practice the same set of things which I am trying to do here. Now, what I will do is I am log into my dev org, and after logging in, so I'll create one more component here, and post that I will show you how we can migrate it to the QA org. I will also log into the Workbench account, the Workbench of dev org, and parallelly I will also log into the QA account, QA Salesforce account or Salesforce org. So let me log in here. I'm logging into the Workbench of QA org as well. Okay. So now what I will do is in my dev org, yesterday I created an object and I named it as demo object. So what I will do today is like I will create a field, and I will also create a layout. So field is a component, field is nothing but field is one type of component. Similarly, layout is also one type of component. So for someone who doesn't have any kind of background on Salesforce, what you can do is forget about the meaning of these components, but just try to understand how I am creating these components. Forget about the purpose of these components. Just try to understand how I am creating these components. So that's sufficient. So what I will do is I will create a field as well as a layout in the object which I created yesterday. So I created an object with the name demo object, and in this object what I will do is I will create a field. So in order to do that, what I am doing is like first I open the object. Whenever you open an object in Salesforce, you will see these kind of options on the left hand side. So you can see something called as fields and relationships, page layouts, lightning record pages. So like you can see a lot of things on the left hand side here. So like I will tell you the purpose and meaning of these components later, but for now what I am trying to do is first I will create a layout. So for that, I'm clicking on layout, and I will click on new. And so what I will do is for existing layout, let me choose the one which is already present on this particular object. And for name, I will name it as some demo layout, and I'll click on save. Okay, so when I clicked on save, what happened is like the layout got opened in edit mode. So what I will do is I will just click on cancel. So the layout got created. You can see the layout with the name demo layout here. And what I will do next is I will create a field, and I will click on, like, in order to create the field, I'm clicking on fields and relationships, and post that I clicked on new button. So here, what I will do is, while creating a field, like there will be you will be asked to select few things. Like it will be some 4 to 5 step process. In the first step of creating a field, what will happen is like it will ask you to select the data type of the field. So I am selecting the data type as text, and I'll click on next. And for field name, I will name the I will give the name as demo field. And for length, I'm providing a value of 20. So apart from this, I'm not touching any of the other options. Clicking on next. And here, what is happening here is like it is asking us to choose the profiles for which this field should have permission. So what I will do is I'm not touching any of these options. So I'll tell you the exact meaning of what is meant by profile, and what is the purpose of giving the permissions for a component to profile in a later session. So for now, I'm not touching any of these components, any of these options, and I will click on next. And here, what I will do is I'm keeping the default options. So this particular field, it is asking us to choose the layouts on which this particular field should be presented. So I am selecting these the two options. So what happens is like, the field gets added to both of these layouts. So I'll click on save. So what I did is I created a field as well as I created a layout as of now. So now what I will do next is I will try to migrate this field and layout to the QA org. So in order to do that, so what I should do is like I should prepare a package.xml file, and in the package.xml file I should specify the name of the field as well as the name of the layout. So here now what I will do now is first I will try to migrate the layout, and post that I will try to migrate the field. So initially what I will do is I will try to migrate the layout only. So now the name of the layout is it's demo layout, and the type of the metadata type for layout is layout. So while preparing the package.xml, so like if you want to find the exact name of a component and type of a component, you can make use of workbench. So suppose as of now, like my requirement is I need to migrate the layout with the name demo layout, which is present inside demo object. So in order to find the exact name that should be used in package.xml and the type that should be specified in package.xml, so what you can do is you can make use of workbench. So in workbench, you can click on if you hover your mouse on info option here, so it will display three options. You can click on metadata types and components, and so here you can type in layout. So I'm just clicking on layout, and so the layout which I'm trying to move here move is like it's available on demo object. So here, so you can see two layouts available on demo object. So let me go back. Okay, so here I can see the two layouts that are present on demo object. So one is demo layout and the other one is demo object layout. So now as of now, like I'm planning to move or migrate this particular layout. So I will click on this. So when I clicked on this icon, what happened is like there are few details getting displayed. So out of these details, so the name which gets displayed for full name should be the name that should be specified in the package.xml, and the value whichever gets displayed for type is the value that should be specified in the package.xml. So while preparing the package.xml, so if you have a confusion on the name that should be specified in the package.xml, you can make use of workbench. And here the name whichever gets displayed for full name will be called as the API name of the component. Generally, like for most types of components whichever we create in Salesforce, you will see two names associated with each and every component. So one will be called as label name and the other one will be called as API name. So suppose if I open this particular field, so you can see here label name as well as API name. And there is also something called as name as well. So for most of the components whichever we create in Salesforce, you will see these two types of name. One will be called as label name and the other one will be called as API name. Label name is nothing but it will be the display name of the component. So whenever that component gets displayed on the UI, so this particular label name gets appeared. When it comes to API name, so in order to do certain kind of things on the component, we will make use of API. So API is a shortcut for application programming interface. So what you should remember is the name that should be specified in the package.xml should be API name of the component, and the type that should be specified in the package.xml should be the metadata type of the component. So for that, you can make use of Workbench. So now what I will do is I will modify the package.xml, which I have already on my system. So I'll make use of the same package.xml file which I created yesterday. I'm opening this package demo.xml file which I created yesterday. So now, as of now, like the number of types of components I need to migrate is one, and the number of components under that particular type is one. So I have one type of component to be migrated, and under that one type, there is only one component that need to be migrated. So the name, the metadata type of the component which I'm trying to migrate is layout. So I'm providing the value of layout as value as layout to the name tag here, and let me copy the name of the component. So I will copy the name of the component from here. So the value whichever is specified for full name, and let me go to package.xml. So I'm pasting the name here. So as of now, like I'm done with like preparing the package.xml. So the next step is like after we prepare the package.xml, so the next step will be we should retrieve the component from the source org, and once we get the metadata zip file, so we will do the deploy operation on the target org. So in the workbench account of dev.org, so I'm clicking on retrieve, and I will select the package.xml file, and I will click on next, and I will click on retrieve. Okay, so I got this zip file as a response. So I'm clicking on download. So this zip file, so as I said yesterday, this will be called as metadata zip file. Metadata zip file, or this can also be called as deployment package as well. Now, the zip file got downloaded. Now what I will do is I will go to the workbench account of QA, or and I will click on deploy. I will select the zip file that got downloaded. Let me check. Okay, downloaded just now. I'm clicking on open. And so yesterday, so while doing yesterday's deployment, so we have not seen the usage of these options. Now what I will do is I will tell you the purpose of check only option. So we will see the meaning and purpose of other options later. So for now, let's try to understand the purpose of check only option. So when we, while doing a deployment using Workbench, if you select this check only checkbox, what happens is like the actual deployment doesn't happen. So, but just the validation of the deployment happens. So, so in order to understand like what is the meaning of validation of a deployment. So what happens is, so whenever you try to do a deployment onto any Salesforce org, two things happen in the backend. First, what Salesforce will do is Salesforce will do a validation of the components. So it will do a validation of the components that are present in the deployment package. One second. I hope all of you are able to see my screen. I got a doubt like whether all of my tabs are visible or not. So can someone confirm if you are able to see my screen or not?
Yeah, we are able
Yes.
to see side. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So first thing is like a validation of the components that are present in the package happens. And in this validation, so what Salesforce will do is there will be two kind of things which Salesforce will check. So first thing is Salesforce will check whether the components that are referred in the component that is being deployed present or not. So, and one more thing is it will check whether the code files of the components are in proper format or whether the code files of the components are in proper format or not. So after this, so the next thing is when both of these checks, if both of these conditions are successfully satisfied, then only Salesforce will do a deployment. So if any of these conditions gets failed, what happens is Salesforce will not do the deployment, but it will throw you an error saying that the deployment got failed. Now, so in order to understand the meaning of this first statement, so in validation, so generally whenever you do a deployment, what happens is Salesforce will do a validation of the deployment package, and if the validation is successful, then only it will do the deployment. In validation, it will check for two things. One is whether the components that are referred in the component that is being deployed are present in the target org or not. And the next thing is whether the code files of the components that are being deployed are in proper format or not. It will check these two things, and when these two checks passes, then only it will do the deployment. So in order to understand the meaning of first statement, so this is nothing but it will check for whether the dependent components are present or not. So in order to understand that, so you can consider a case of object and field. So now generally what happens is fields are child components of object. Fields does not exist without an object. So field is a child component, and it will exist only if an object is present. So that means so field has a dependency on object. So field is a child component of object, and field has a dependency on object. Suppose you have created an object and you have also created a field inside that particular object, and let's assume that that particular object is not present in the target or and you are just trying to migrate the field. So in this case, what happens is the first check gets failed. The reason for that is field is dependent on object, and that particular dependent component is not present in the target or so this is an example of dependency or the meaning of the component that is referred in the component being deployed. So the first check is nothing but dependency check. So in Salesforce, what happens is there will be a relationship between lot of components. One component will depend on other component in order for its existence, or there will be some other reason as well. So the reason why one component depends on other component is one might be this case, the case of parent and child relationship. The other case would be so it will depend on another component in order to share certain kind of information. So first statement is Salesforce will check for a dependency, like whether the dependent components are present or not. And the next case is whether like the statement which I written here is like whether the code files of the components are in proper format or not. So the meaning of this is when I retrieved, when we did the retrieve operation, as a response, what I got is I got a metadata zip file. So yesterday I showed you what will be present in that zip file. So generally the code file of the components will be present in the zip file. Sometimes, so generally when we do the deployments in this fashion, as of now what we are doing is we are retrieving the components code from an or, and we are trying to deploy the same code whichever we got into the target org. But in real times, for projects which follows a DevOps process, we won't do the deployments in this manner. First, we will retrieve the component code from an OR, and from there we will push the code to version control system. And again, in version control system, what happens is we will have something called as branches. So first, we will push the code to a branch in version control system, and from that branch, from one branch to we will move code from one branch to another branch. So in this process, what happens is sometimes when we migrate the code of a component from one branch to another branch, what happens is there will be something called as conflicts. So in Git terminology, so whenever conflicts occurs, the code file of the component gets corrupted. So when you push the code to your version control system, and when you try to move the code file from one branch to another branch, so there will be a chance of the code file getting corrupted. So we will see that case later, but for now, let's concentrate on first point, which is nothing but the dependency validation. So sometimes in that process, while we migrate code from one branch to another branch in version control system or Git, there will be a chance of the code file of the component getting corrupted. So I will tell you the meaning of this point when we discuss about version control system. For now, let's concentrate on this first statement. So now what I did is I created a layout and I retrieved the layout, and I'm trying to just validate that particular layout. And one more thing is, so what I am doing here is instead of directly deploying the component, I have selected this particular option. So whenever you select check only option, so the actual deployment doesn't happen, but only the validation of the components that are present in the deployment package happens. So let's see what is the meaning of this. So I'm selecting this check only option and clicking on next, and I will click on deploy. So with this, what happens is only a validation of the components that are present in the deployment package happens, or the validation of the deployment happens, but the actual deployment doesn't happen. So as of now, if you look at the status of this deployment, so you can see the status has failed, and the reason for this is like uh, there is a kind of validation error which we got on that particular layout. So in order to if you want to look at the reason for which the deployment got failed, so you can expand this component failure section, and if you open this particular component, the component which we are trying to migrate, so here there is a attribute or property called as problem, and here if you see the message, it says no custom field named demo field found. So the meaning of this is we are trying to deploy a layout into QA, or and this layout is referring to a field called as demo field. So this is the field which I created just now. So the layout is referring to a field called as demo field, and that particular field is not present in the target object. So that's the reason what happened is the deployment got failed. So in order to fix this, we have two options. One is we can either remove the reference of this particular field from the layout. So we can remove the reference of that particular field from the layout, or we can include the field also in the package. So in order to resolve this error, resolve it using the second approach. So instead of removing the reference of the field from the package from the layout, I will add the field to the layout, to the deployment package. So now one more thing is if you want to monitor the find out the reason why a deployment got failed, or if you want to check the status of the deployment after you initiate it, what you can do is you can type it on the setup homepage. In the search box on the setup homepage, you can type in something called as deployment status. So if you type in deployment status, what happens is, okay, so it is not opening this page in this mode. Okay. Uh, so I typed in deployment status. So when I typed in deployment status, you can see a few results here. So whenever you initiate a deployment onto any Salesforce, or what happens is a deployment job gets created, and each job will have a ID associated with it. So it will be called as deployment job ID. So as of now, the latest deployment which got failed is this one. So that is related to the one which we are trying to do now. So even you can monitor the status of the deployment from this deployment status page. In order to monitor the status, you should copy the ID of the deployment job. So generally, whenever you initiate in a deployment, the ID of the job gets displayed. So you can copy the ID of that particular deployment job, and you can go to this deployment status page, and so from here you can do a control F with the ID whichever you copied. Generally, while copying the ID, while searching with the IDs, you can remove the last three digits of the ID, because it will display only the first 15 digits. Generally, the length of the ID will be some 18 digits. So here it will display only the 15 digits. So you can remove the last three digits. So here I can find the ID here. If I click on view details, so what is happening here is like here you can see that there was one component which we were trying to deploy, and the deployment of that particular component got failed because of this reason. So the reason is no custom field with the name demo field form. So now what I will do is I will include the field also in the package.xml. So in order to do that, so what I will do is I will go to metadata types and components, and I will copy the API name as well as the type of the field from here. So the name of the field is, my field is present in demo object, and okay, so in order to copy the name of the field, so first I need to type in field here. The metadata type for field is custom field. It's not just the field, it's custom field, and my field is present in demo object, and so this is the field which I'm trying to deploy. So what I will do is, earlier what we had is like we had only one type of component that needs to be migrated. As of now, like there are two types of components that needs to be migrated. So one is layout, other one is custom field. So layout is a different type and custom field is a different type. So the number of types tag now will be equal to 2, because I'm also trying to migrate field. So I have copied this entire types tag and I pasted it here. And for the name of this type tag, what I will do is I'll specify the type of the custom field. So I'll specify the type of the field. I'm copying the field type here. I will go to VS Code. I'll paste it here, and I'll copy the name of the component as well. So the name of the component is nothing but the API name, and the API name will be the name which gets displayed as a value for full name. Here for this name, for the members tag, I am pasting the value whichever I have copied. So as of now, if you look at this particular package.xml file, so there are two types of components I need to deploy. That's the reason we have two types tag in our package.xml, and under each type we have only one number of component. That's the reason we have only one members component. Under each type, you will see only one name tag, but the number of members tags will be equal to the number of components under that particular type. Suppose if you had a case like you want to migrate one more field as well, so what happens is like you will add one more members tag here. So like you won't add uh, one more name, like one more type tag separately for the same field type. But if they like, if your request was, if you want to migrate two fields and a layout, so in that case your package.xml will look in this manner. So the simple statement which the point which you can remember while preparing the package.xml is, number of types tags in our package.xml should be equal to the number of types of components that we need to migrate, and the number of members tags inside each type tag should be equal to the number of components of that particular type. So as of now, there is only one number of component under each of these types. That's the reason we have only one members tag in package.xml. So if you remember those 2 points, that is sufficient. Okay. And so as of now, like I prepared the package.xml. Next is what I will do is, as I have included field also into the package.xml, so I will retrieve the field as well as the layout again. So I have clicked on retrieve, and I will select the package.xml. I will click on next. I will click on retrieve, and I'm downloading the zip file. Next, so the zip file, I got the zip file. Someone, like, can someone go on mute? There is some kind of disturbance coming. I think it's Sunil. Sunil, can you please go on mute? Yeah, thank you. Okay. So now let me move into the Workbench account of QA or. So here I will click on deploy, and I will select the zip file that got downloaded, or the zip file which I got as a response for the retrieve operation which I did. So this is that. And I'm again selecting the check only option, and I will click on next, and I will click on deploy. Okay. So as of now, like you can see the status has succeeded. So that means the validation of the deployment got succeeded. So I can show you that from here as well. So deployment status. And if you look at the time when we got this error, so it's at 7:33 a.m. And if you look at time when we got this validation succeeded, it's at 7:42 a.m. So this is the latest validation which got succeeded. So here you can see the message saying the validation succeeded. So as of now, as we have selected the check only option, what happened is like only the validation happened, but the deployment didn't happen. So I can show you that as well. So if I open the demo object in QA, you won't see the layout and the field. So let me open that. So if I go to layouts, so here I can't see that demo layout. Similarly, if I go to fields and type in demo, I won't see the demo field. So now what I will do next is, instead of checking the check only option, so I will I won't select the check only option and I will directly do the deployment, and let's see what happens now. So when you don't check only, when you don't select check only option, what happens is the deployment of the component happens. So whether you check only option or you don't check only option, what happens is in the backend, Salesforce will first do the validation, and when the validation gets passed, then only it will deploy the components. But the purpose of this check only option is, sometimes in real times what happens is if you want to validate your package in advance, generally while doing the production deployments, what happens is the deployments to the production or go live or will be scheduled. Generally you will be in order to avoid last minute surprises, what happens is you will validate the deployment package against production much in advance. Like you will validate the package some 3 days before the actual deployment date. So with that, what happens is uh, like uh, you will get an idea on whether there are any deployment errors or not, so that it won't delay the production deployment process. So in order to validate the packages much in advance, so you can make use of this check only option. So as of now, we can see the message as the deployment status has succeeded. Now if I go here and refresh this page, so now I can see this demo field, as well as if I go to layouts, so I can see the demo layout getting deployed into this particular org. So this is how you can deploy this is the purpose of check only option, and the 2 points which you should keep in mind when a deployment happens. The validation of the component happens, and in validation there will be two kind of checks. One is dependency check, and the other one is whether the code file of the component is in proper format or not. So generally, in real time, people will, even though it is possible to do deployments using Workbench, people won't do deployments using Workbench, because it's sometimes what happens it will be Workbench application will be somewhat unstable, and it will break in between. Like if you have large number of components to be retrieved, what happens is sometimes it will break, and it won't return as the expected result. So one is that, and the other thing is it won't be possible to push the changes to a version control system using Workbench. So we can't push the changes to a version control system. Version control system is nothing but you can consider it as a Git. It won't be possible to push the changes to Git using Workbench. That's the reason people won't use Workbench. So generally, people will make use of other tools. So as of now, in order to give you an understanding on how we can migrate things using Workbench, it will be somewhat simpler. Like migrating components using Workbench will be simpler when we compare it with SFDX. So the reason for that is SFDX is a command line tool. So sometimes what happens is in the beginning stage, people will feel somewhat people will feel running commands as somewhat a complex thing when we compare it with the point and clicking. So that's the reason I have showed you this. So the next thing is, as of now, what you should have understood is you should have understood the process that should be followed in order to migrate a component from one or to another org. So the steps which we should follow are you should prepare a package.xml. In the package.xml, you should specify the name and the type of the component, and you should do the retrieve operation. Then we should do a deployment operation on the target org. So these are the steps which we followed. So later, when the WhatsApp group, generally like these people will create a group, including all of the people, whoever are willing to continue in Discord. So I have prepared a document. So generally, like I will share once that group gets created, I will share the document in the channel. So next thing is like we will stop the discussion on Workbench here, and next thing is like we will see the like how we can do the things using SFDX. So first thing is
Nice.
SFDX is a short, yeah. Uh,
Yeah, all the
we'll say
components will be deployed through Workbench. For example, LWC like JS
yes,
files and image
everything
files.
can be deployed. Whatever be the components that can be deployed, so those can be deployed using Workbench.
Okay, but you're telling unstable due to Workbench.
So instead of unstable, what you can consider is like it won't be possible to deploy, like push the changes to a version control system. So I'm not telling you that it won't be possible to deploy all types of components. So sometimes the application will be unstable. Unstable in the sense it will get it gets hanged or it may break in middle. So that's the meaning of unstable.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, no problem. So next is SFDX. So SFDX stands for Salesforce Developer Experience. So it is a shortcut for Salesforce Developer Experience. And so what is SFDX is? It is a set of tools which helps to build, test, and deploy applications built on Salesforce platform. So SFDX is a set of tools which helps to build, test, and deploy applications built on Salesforce platform. Now, so I'm saying that it is a set of tools. Out of these tools, we will concentrate on the tool that will be used for building and deploying the application. So generally, the reason why it is called as a build tool is like it will help us in building the package as well as migrating the components or code from one org to another org. So now, out of these tools, so there is a tool like out of these set of tools, there is a tool called as Salesforce CLI, which will be used in order to migrate the components from one environment to another environment. So it will actually this CLI will act as the build tool. So now, in order to work with SFDX, so you should have like a general. And one more thing is like the Salesforce CLI is a command line tool, and in order to work with Salesforce CLI, you should install Salesforce CLI on your machine. So without doing that, you won't be able to work with Salesforce CLI. So first thing is like you should install Salesforce CLI on your machine. Post that, like I will tell you the steps that needs to be followed. So you can also, so apart from Salesforce CLI, you can also install Visual Studio Code as well. So it's not like we can only do the deployments using Salesforce CLI if we have Visual Studio Code, but if we use Salesforce CLI in conjunction with Visual Studio Code, what happens is like it will simplify the things, but it will be possible to deploy the things or do the retrievals and deployments using Salesforce CLI without Visual Studio Code. But if you use Salesforce CLI along with Visual Studio Code, it will simplify the things. So what you can do is you can download Visual Studio Code as well as you can also download Salesforce CLI. So if you want to download Salesforce CLI, you can simply type in Salesforce CLI in your browser, some Salesforce CLI download, and so you'll see a standard Salesforce CLI documentation. So in the documentation, like on the first page itself, you will see the results for downloading this particular application or tool. So here, based on your OS, you can choose the OS and you can download it onto your system. So as of now, like Salesforce CLI and Visual Studio Code are already installed on my system. So what I will do is, so I'll show you the next steps after the installation. So for that, what I will do is, let me open a new window. So I just opened a new window of this Visual Studio Code. And so after installing Salesforce CLI, so in order to check whether the installation is successful or not, so what you can do is, so Visual Studio Code, what happens like it comes integrated with something called as terminal. So terminal is nothing but it's similar to the command prompt that is available on Windows machines. So like I am using a Mac system. So like generally like a terminal on Mac is similar to the command prompt on Windows machine. So while working with any command line tool, what happens is like you should run the commands. So in order to run the commands, you should either run them from the command prompt or terminal. So this Visual Studio Code, it comes integrated with the terminal. As of now, like I open the terminal from here. So if you want to, if you don't want to do it here, you can also directly open the terminal separately as well. So both are same. So like even on Windows machines, what happens is like you can open the command prompt directly from VS Code, or you can open it separately. So both will be the same. The purpose of these terminals or command prompts will be to run some kind of commands. Now, what I will do is I will, instead of like opening the terminal separately, I will run the commands directly from here in the VS Code. So here, after doing the installation, like after you install Salesforce CLI, so while you install, so like when you click on like after the installation file gets downloaded, and when you click on install, so you can keep the default options. So generally, like when you click on install, it may ask you for like it may ask you to select a few kind of options. You can keep the default settings and click on next and click on install. So that's it. You can keep the default options. No need of changing anything. So after the installation gets successful, in order to check whether the installation is successful or not, what you can do is on terminal, you can type in sfdx. So if you type in sfdx, what happens is like if the installation is successful, it will show you the version of the Salesforce CLI that is installed on your machine. And if the installation is not successful, what happens is like it will throw you a message saying SFDX is command SFDX is not recognized. So what you can do is you can type in SFDX before installation and you can check the output. And post the installation, you can check run the command SFDX and check the output. You will see the difference between these two. Now, as of now, like when I typed in SFDX, so you can see the version of the CLI that is installed on my machine is 2.10.2. And if it was not installed, it would have thrown me a message saying that SFDX command SFDX is not recognized. So this is not only with SFDX, it happens with any command line too. So whenever you install any application, so in order like suppose if you have installed Java onto your machine, so in order to check whether Java got installed or successful, what you will do is you will simply type in Java hyphen version. So this what it will do is it will display the version of the Java that got installed on your machine. So it happens in order to check any command line tools whether the command line tools got installed successfully or not. You can make use of these commands. So as of now, like in order to check whether the installation is successful or not, you can type in sfdx. And one more thing is, so while working with the command line tools, what happens is that you need to run command from the terminal. So while working with the terminal, what happens is like the terminal will point to a directory on your machine, and all of the whenever you run any particular command, so the things whichever are related to that particular command will happen inside this particular directory to which the folder is pointing to. So we will see we will see what is mean by directory, and what is the reason it points to a specific directory on our mission when we cover the topic of shell. So but for now, what you can remember is each terminal, what happens like whenever you open a terminal, it will point to a directory on your mission. Just remember that. That is sufficient. The next thing is like if you want to do deployments using sfdx, so the next step is, so installing Salesforce CLI is a one-time activity. So once you will, if you install CLI once on your machine, so that is sufficient. So after that, so in order to do the deployments, what you should do is like there are few steps which you should do. So the first step is you should create something called as SFDX project on your system. So in order to create SFDX project, so there is a command which you should run on your system. So the command is SFDX force colon source colon. So it's force colon create colon project. So this is the command. Don't worry. Like there is a reference for these commands. I will share that reference. if you find difficulty in remembering the uh, commands, I can share you the documentation where you can find the commands. So it's not like you should remember the commands. You can even refer the documentation and copy those commands. So the command that should be used in order to create a SFDX project is SFDX space force colon create colon project. And for this particular command, so until this is the command, and this particular command, what it will do is it will support a few kind of parameters or options. So project name is one of the parameter that is supported by this particular command, so it will be used in order to provide a name for this particular project. So project is nothing but it is a folder that gets created on our machine. So what I will do is I will name this particular project as name demo sftx vpath. Okay, so I'm giving a random name. So after giving this particular name, what I will do is I will also pass in something called as manifest. I'm clicking on enter. So this is the command. So after typing in the command, I clicked on enter. So what is happening is the Salesforce CLI is processing that command in the backend. And what happened is the command got executed successfully. Now with this, when I ran this command, what happened is a folder with this name got created on my machine. So project SFDX project is nothing but it is a folder. So now what I will do is I will open this particular folder here, the folder which got created. So let me, so that folder got created in this directory. The reason for that is my terminal was pointing to this directory. So there is a directory with this name on my system. And as my terminal was pointing to that particular directory, the folder got created under that particular directory. So I will open this particular folder. So if you see here, there are few folders as well as files inside the project or folder which got created. So generally, so this is the structure of SFDX project. So if you see here, there are few folders as well as few files inside this particular project or folder. So this particular folder structure will be called as SFDX structure, and there will be a specific purpose for each of these folders and files that are getting displayed here. So we will see the meaning and purpose of the purpose of each and every of these folders in the coming sessions. So for now, so after creating the project, so for the first step in the process of doing a migration using SFDX is you should create a SFDX project on your machine. And after that, so after creating the project, the next step is you should establish connections between the Salesforce orgs. You should establish connections between the orgs on which you want to perform the retrieve and deploy operations. So as of now, I will establish connections between the dev and QA orgs which I have. I think already the connection might got established for them, but I will show you how we can establish the connection again. So the command that should be run in order to establish connection between the CLI on your system and the Salesforce org is sfdx out colon web colon login. So this is the command. So and this command supports a parameter called as instance URL. So for the instance URL, you should provide the instance URL of the Salesforce org to which you are trying to connect. So generally, all of the developer edition accounts have this URL login.salesforce.com, and so it will also support a parameter called as alias. So while establishing connection between any Salesforce org, what you can do is you can specify a alias name for that particular org. Alias name is nothing but a shortcut or shorthand name for that particular org. So with the help of which you can do all kind of operations on that particular org. So what I will do is I will try to establish connection between the dev org which I have and the Salesforce CLI on my machine. So in order to do that, I am running this particular command. So sfdx space out colon web colon login is the command, and this particular command supports a few parameters or options. So out of those few parameters and options, I'm making use of these two parameters: instance URL and alias. So for instance URL, I specified the URL of the Salesforce instance, And for alias, I have provided a name for the shortcut name for the R. So I have provided the name as vpathdev, and I will click on enter. So when you do this, what happens is, okay, so I think I typed in the parameter name incorrectly. So it's instance sta. Okay, so let me rerun this command. So when we run that particular command, what happened is like it redirected to the browser, and on the browser that particular URL got opened. So generally, like whenever we enter login.salesforce.com, it will redirect you to a page where it will ask you to enter the username and password. So here, like these are the credentials of my dev work. So I'm keeping the default values and I'm clicking on login. So you can see a message saying authentication is successful. That means the connection got established successfully between the Salesforce CLI, the CLI on my machine, and that particular org. So you can see a message here saying that successfully authorized org. And now, so after the connection gets similarly, like you should also establish connection between the other orgs on which you want to perform the retrieve and deploy operations. So as of now, like I have like the connection between my the QA org which I am using here is already established. So I'll tell you one more command. So if you want to check the list of orgs that are already connected with the CLI on your machine, you can run in a command called as sfdx space force colon org colon list. So what it will do is it will display you the list of orgs that got connected with the CLI on your machine. So you can see here. So you can see this org here, which I connected just now, and I have also connected the QA org earlier. So you can see the status as connected. Sometimes what happens is like for some reasons the connection might like will get break for some reason. So in that case, what you can do is you can re-establish the connection. So if you see any other status other than connected, that means the connection got broken for some reason, and you can re-establish the connection. So for now, vpath dev is the alias name which I give for my dev org, and vpath qa is the alias name which I give for my qa org. So after you do this, after you establish the connections, so the next step is what you should do is like you should prepare the package.xml, and you can specify the components that need to be retrieved, and you can do the retrieve operation, and you can do the deployment. So the next things will be the same. So if you remember, if you carefully observe these points, the steps are remaining the same, the process will remain the same, but the way how we do the things gets changed. So here what I will do is, in order to show you a deployment using this sfdx, what I will do is I will create one more field in this particular object. And so here in demo object, what I will do is I will create a field. I will select the field type as text. I will click on next, and I will name it as demo field 2. Okay, so I'm just giving these values. I will click on next, and so I'm not touching any of these options. Even I'm not touching changing any of these options, and I will click on save. So I have created a field with the name demo field 2. Now, let's see how we can deploy this particular field using SFDX. So in order to do that, first thing is like we should prepare a package.xml. So whenever you create a SFDX project, what happens is like while running the project command, I have specified this manifest parameter to this project create command. So whenever you specify manifest parameter in the project create command, what happens is like a manifest folder gets created, and inside that particular folder a package.xml file will be present. So if you don't specify this particular parameter, what happens is like the folder gets created, but it won't contain this manifest. The SFDX folder or project gets created, but it won't contain this manifest folder. So like in that case, what you can do is you can simply, like if you want, you can simply add the package.xml file directly under this particular folder, or you can create a folder and store the package.xml file under that particular folder. So it's not like the package.xml should be present only inside a folder whose name will be manifest. It can be present directly inside this folder. So it can be present directly inside this folder, or it can also present inside another folder inside this particular directory. So as of now, like what is happening is like there is a folder called as manifest inside this particular folder, and the package.xml file is present inside that particular folder. So, like whenever this happens, what happens is like it will generate some default package.xml. That's the reason we are seeing a few things inside this particular package.xml. So when you create a SFDX project, what happens is like it will generate a default package.xml. So if you want, you can make use of it. Otherwise, you can remove it. So now what I will do is, so I will show you other way of preparing the package.xml. So generally, like in real time, what happens is like we will be asked to migrate large number of components from one org to another org. So like if you get hundreds of components to be migrated, so if you prepare the package.xml manually, what happens is like it will take a lot of time. So in order to avoid that, what you can do is, so there are few extensions available for Workbench, and you can make use of those extensions. What happens is like they will help you in generating the package.xml. So here, so like on Chrome, there is a extension called as package.xml generator. So I think, okay. So the name of it is force.com migration tool package creator. So this is the name of the extension, force.com migration tool package creator. So you can add this particular extension to Workbench. So what I will recommend you is, first you can try the things without adding this extension, and later you can add this extension and make use of the package whichever gets with the help of this extension. So now, as of now, like the extension is already added to my Workbench, like the Chrome on my machine. Now I will show you how we can make use of that particular extension. So when you add that particular extension, what happens is, like without the extension, you can check how the workbench looks like when you don't have that extension. So generally, like you won't see like these options, like the checkboxes next to the component names, and even you won't see this section as well, the package XML section on the left hand side. You can try that. So first you can try without adding the extension, and later you can check how the workbench UI looks like after the extension gets added. So as of now, like I need to migrate a field inside demo object, and the name of the field is demo field. So what I will do is I will select the field here. So what happens is like if you just select the component that needs to be migrated, the package.xml gets generated automatically. So I can copy this particular package.xml. So if you see here, I selected the field here. The package.xml got generated with the field inside it, and copying that particular package.xml, and I will replace the package.xml here with the package.xml file, whichever I have copied. So now, as of now, like the XML file or package.xml file is ready. So like in this particular file, I have specified the component that needs to be retrieved. Now, the next step is like after preparing the package.xml, we need to retrieve the component from the source org. And in order to retrieve the component from the source org, the command is sfdx space force colon source colon retrieve colon retrieve force colon source colon retrieve followed by, so we should specify the location of the package.xml. So like we should specify the location of the package.xml to manifest parameter. So as of now, like my terminal is pointing to a folder with the name demo sdx. Okay. So I named it as demo sdx vpath2. And inside this particular folder, as of now, like the terminal is pointing to this particular folder. And in this folder, there is a folder called as manifest. And in manifest, we have a file called as package.xml. So for this, as the terminal is already pointing to this particular folder, what I will do is, for manifest parameter, I will pass in the path of the package.xml file as package manifest slash package.xml. Suppose if your case was, so inside manifest folder, there was a folder called as folder, like there is consider like there is a folder with the name folder, and inside that particular folder, there was a file called as package.xml. So then in that case, the location which you will pass here is manifest slash folder slash package.xml. So for this manifest parameter, you should specify the path of the package.xml file. So as of now, like as it is present inside this manifest folder, I'm specifying the path in this manner. And after this, so you should specify the name of the org from which the components should be received. So while establishing the connection, I gave a alias name. So I will make use of that alias name in order to specify the name. So the parameter which you can make use of in order to specify the name is -u. So U stands for username. And for this name, I will pass in the alias name which I give while establishing the connection. So that's it. So this is the command. So it's source colon retrieve followed by manifest. For manifest parameter, you should pass in the path of the package.xml, and for u parameter, you should pass in the alias name of the org from which you want to do the retrieval operation. So I will run this particular command. So before running that particular command, so inside there is a folder called as forceapp, and inside forceapp folder, so there is again a folder called as main and default, and inside it there is a folder called as object. So as of now, like the object folder is empty. Let me run this particular command and let's see what happens. So I will take some 5 to 10 minutes. We'll close the discussion in 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. So the retrieval operation got completed successfully. So you can see the status here. And so if you look at the contents inside the objects folder, what happened is like like it is storing the component under objects folder. So here earlier inside objects folder we didn't had anything. So but as of now, like there is a folder called as like a folder got created with the name of the object in which that particular field was present. And inside that there is there is again a folder called as fields, and inside the field folder you can see the code file of the field component. So now what I will do is I will show you how we can deploy the things. So in order to deploy the things, there will be a minor change in the command between retrieve and deploy. So the command that should be used for deploying is sfdx space force colon deploy, and for the username of the org, I will specify the alias name of the QA org. So that's it. This is the only change. You should change in the org into which you want to deploy, and you should change the command from retrieve to deploy. So you can see a message saying deploy got succeeded. So if I go to QA org and if I refresh this page, so here in fields and relationships, so you can see this field called as demo field. So that's it. So this is how you can do the deployments using SFTX. So next thing is like, so this is the process which we follow in order to migrate the components. But there are few things which you should be aware of. Like while deploying a few types of components, there are few things which you should be aware of. Like in order to migrate the exact changes, like there are few points which you should keep in mind. So we will see those cases in the coming sessions. So I'll stop the discussion here. And one thing what I will tell is like if someone is looking for both admin and DevOps training, so you can tell the institute people that we are looking for both admin and DevOps training. So based on the count which we get, so we will either separate the batch, like separate the people into two batches, and we will take the sessions. Like we'll plan it accordingly based on the number of count whichever we get. So if you are just looking for only DevOps, you can tell them that we are just looking for DevOps. That's it. So I'll stop the session here. If you have any questions, you can stay back and ask me. Otherwise, you can drop out.
Um, so what are the challenges come like during
What
this?
are the challenges?
Yeah, like during this steps. What is the failure challenges like?
So we will show this. We will saw that. We'll see them in the coming sessions.
Okay, okay.
I say most of
Yeah.
the organizations are using COPADO like that, uh, but for example, if you work for small organization, they're using like Jenkins. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
which is better, COPADO or Jenkins like that
Like if you use
integrations?
Copado, it will it will simplify the things. But the thing is you should like the Copado is a licensed tool, and Jenkins is a not a licensed tool. So it depends. It varies from companies to companies. So there are only very few companies which are using Jenkins because in order to do few kind of things, it will be somewhat difficult or won't be possible using Jenkins. So there are very less companies which are using Jenkins nowadays. They are using some other types of tools. Not only
So
Jenkins and Copado, there are a lot of variety of tools available. Like it varies from company to company.
yeah, 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 yes, yes.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
Uh, what is the roles and responsibilities for the COPADO Salesforce? if you are going
You
to
will
be a
understand
DevOps
them
person,
hmm
if you're going to be a DevOps person, what
hmm.
will be the roles and responsibilities? What are the complications in that?
So roles and responsibilities, like in order to understand them, you need to know few more details as well. So roles and when it comes to the roles and responsibilities of a Salesforce DevOps engineer, you will be asked to set up the environments. You will be asked to set up the DevOps or CI/CD process. Like
Okay.
it is not only applicable to Copado, it will be applicable to any of the tools. So you will be asked to set up this process if the process is not there already. But if the process is there already, so you will be working on either setting up the environments or refreshing the environments, and you will be primarily working on migrating the code from one environment to another environment. You will be taking care of these deployment activities. You will be responsible for doing the production releases. So these
Okay.
will be the primary activities which you will see for this role.
But the if the setup is done, then we will need to take
So
just
if
the
the setup is
deployment.
done, you will do the things on the existing process only.
Okay, got it.
But when the issues comes in COPADO or in Jenkins, again we should know anything like Apex class, something like that. Even
No,
Salesforce DevOps
Apex,
also.
Apex knowledge or Salesforce knowledge is not required. Because in Jenkins, we nowhere use Apex. Even in when in Copado, generally Copado is a tool that is built on Salesforce platform. In order to do implement few kind of requirements, you can go with Apex, but without that also you can achieve the things.
No, I'm telling in terms of issues will come in
So even
deployments.
for issues you won't be required to have any knowledge on Apex.
Okay,
Generally, like if you get any issues related to Apex kind of things, you can reach out to the development team.
okay, okay. They want us to the DevOps okay to look.
No, they won't ask.
And you're going to explain the GitHub with the Copado?
Yes. So, what you can do is, I said this point in the yesterday's class as well. So, I have specified all of the topics which I'm going to cover as part of this course, in a document. You can get the course content document from the institute people, and you can go through that course content document. There you can see all of the topics that we are going to cover as part of this course.
Okay, got it. Sorry, yesterday I didn't attend, so.
Okay, no problem. Okay, then. So if there are no questions, you can tell your feedback. So based on that, we will finalize the people and we'll continue with them from the next class.
Sai, classes are very good, Andy. No doubt about it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
openly telling it's really excellent and extraordinary. And the way you explained yesterday, the complete structure is really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, we will
And
meet
what
again
we
in
are
the.
covering tomorrow? What we are covering tomorrow?
So it will be an extension of this. So I said that we will be there are few there will be few types of components. Like when we migrate few types of components, there are few things which you should keep in mind. So we are going
Okay.
to look into those cases.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Andy. So actually, I have some other work, so I'm ending it a bit quicker. We will meet again in the tomorrow session.